Julius Productions. Sit down, get comfy, and await your horror.
Hello there, everyone. How are you today? Hope you're all doing well. However, what awaits your life? That is the question. Now, I am here to provide some horror story narrations for you. I'll be uploading them later on on my YouTube. However, if you are here, you get to hear them first. Now, let us begin the storytelling we have. Okay? First story, thus titled, An Audience. How fitting. Oh, you fool. You absolute buffoons. You don't know what awaits you, do you? You don't. And that's exactly what makes this worth reading. The walk always took half an hour. Half an hour there, half an hour back. From the outside. But it always felt longer when he actually walked the tunnel. It felt like time was being stretched out. That his quiet footsteps would softly echo for endless miles. Tonight was a long, long walk. He could feel the weight of the earth pushing down on his shoulders. The air in the tunnel was cold. The smooth concrete was frigid to the touch. The only thing to pierce the darkness was the bright cone of his flashlight. This was a very odd place. Very old indeed. It didn't look it to the eyes. It was just a maintenance tunnel. Bare concrete. To the occasional exposed pipe, there was time stored up in these stones, soaked up like a sponge, filling the place as it slowly oozed out the cracks in the walls and the rust on the pipes. His flashlight bobbed. He kept walking as time passed. Then finally, already, the arch, where there would have been a door, there was no door anymore. The words carved on the lintel had been worn down long ago. Words had little power here. He stepped through. He reached the hole, though he only knew it from the breeze. And the feeling of the walls dropping away into the shadows. There was only darkness there. He kept walking. His footsteps did not echo. Shapes stirred in his peripheral vision. Ghostly lights flickered to life. A graveyard of broken and cracked computer monitors shed their sickly light. Nothing was ever displayed. All around him, he could see the dim outlines of scrap wires and old circuit boards and junk towers. He could hear rustling and laughter from the shadows, occasionally see the glowing reflection of an eye, and then there was the throne. The great seats amidst the rusting, decaying garbage was occupied, as it always was. The form of the king was tall, thin, shapeless, and still shaped somewhat like a man, wearing a pale face and dark clothes, a courtesy. The king wore no crown. The king had no need for one. Around the throne sat the king's attendants, waiting at attention, their faceless faces smiling for eternity. They turned to watch the man as he approached the throne, their empty eyes looking as one gaze. The man stopped, he bowed and then righted himself. The king bent down, extending a hand of long bony fingers. The shadows around it crept and grew like the roots of some gnarled ancient tree. The man took a paper bag from his coat pocket. From it he counted out 21 pebbles into the king's bony hand. The king's hand closed, and the king sat straight again. The man was free to leave now, and that he did. The walk back felt shorter this time. He shrugged off the thought. 21 pebbles for 21 children who would be gone by the morning. Maybe not this morning, maybe not next, but some morning. 21 children, delivered every year. That was the deal that had been kept for a long, long time. Deals had to be kept. Oh, deals, they are meant to be kept. Next story, cave paintings. In a barren mountain range in northern Europe is a secluded cave. Deep inside is a chamber that appears to have been used in ancient rituals. The walls of the roughly circular space are densely covered in cave paintings. At first glance, they seem much like those found in other caves in that part of Europe, rendered in red and brown orchards. Look closely, however, and you will see that the most common figures depicted are subtly non-human beings. They are humanoid, but slightly hunched. And while it is hard to be sure, owing to the primitive style of the art, each figure appears to have two short, comical horns on its head, and a hint of a tail. Look more closely still, and you will see them appear to be roasting humans over open fires, or feasting upon human-looking limbs. The paintings are disquieting. but they are just old pictures. The scenes they depict happened countless years ago, if they even happened at all. A determined traveler seeking shelter from a blizzard might decide to ignore the paintings and make camp. For many, seeing their own silhouettes superimposed on those eerie paintings will be the last straw, driving them to try their luck outside with the snow. Others will stay. Sometimes nothing will happen. These lucky travelers will emerge the next morning, haggard from a night filled with half-remembered nightmares, anxious but still alive. Other times, shadows will move on the walls, shadows cast by nobody present in the room. The wavering firelight will blur their outlines, make them hard to pick out, and some observers may believe them to be a trick of the light. Watch closely though, and you will see that the shadows resemble hunched figures, perhaps with small horns, and maybe a hint of a stubby tail with them. These figures will gravitate towards the shadow of those who are taking shelter in the cave. They may appear to stand over their sleeping forms. They may appear to be holding weapons like spears or rough axes. Often a lone traveler sheltering in the cave will never be seen or heard from again. Their fates will remain unknown. However, these traveling in a group will be woken by screams in the night. They will be looking for the source of their screams, and find that one of their number is missing, their bedroll empty. If they happen to look at just the right place on the wall, they may see the wavering shadows of figures who are not present in the room, or at least not visible. The fire will be low and red, so the shadows dim and soft-edged, but it will appear that a struggling form is being seared and clubbed by multiple assailants, and then dragged away, out of the circle of the firelight. The screams will fade slowly, seeming to sink into the rocks themselves. And that is a new cave painting on the wall. The next morning? Surely not. The archers are painted just as old and dry as the rest. No, no. That picture of a man being gutted by horned figures must have always been there. Oh, very interesting. Last story for the day will be an old woman and her garden. An old woman fought loneliness with her garden, passing the time between naps by singing to the things she grew there. She loved every one of her crops, from the tiny sprouting needles to the hard stalks that swayed and flexed above the ground. They shined white in the day, and at night the small patch gleamed against the side of her house like teeth in a massive jaw. The old woman had lived by herself for many years. Her house would be small if she had a family, but because she was alone, it was the perfect size. She filled the house with things, figurines, National Geographic back issues, litter boxes for dozens of cats that came and went, until she was snug inside. She had lost her husband years ago. There was nothing left of him except for many thousands of dollars tucked away in an old coffee can. The old woman clipped coupons and shopped at discount stores. She folded her leftover newspaper and shopping bags and stacked them until they reached the ceiling. The old woman never grew anything except bones in her garden. She had never tried to plant anything else. She didn't know if regular things would grow from her soil, and didn't know if regular things, and never thought about it aside from brief moments of curiosity. She never tried to plant bones anywhere else, so she never found out of her house if it was special or if she just had a talent. It had started by accident with Osiris. One of her cats had died one night, an ancient scrappy beast who moved on peacefully. She buried him before his body was cold. Almost 2 weeks went by before she noticed it. A silver eggshell, white and sharp as a pin. She didn't know what to do. She laid down plant food and watered it every day. Over weeks, the silver grew and grew. Eventually, a pink cap formed over its end. The old woman expected the cap to become a flower, but little by little, it took shape and became a joint. Another bone grew out of the joint, and after a few more weeks there was a kitty's arm, skeletal but easy to recognize, claws gripping the earth. Little by little, from the base of its arm to the ends of the fingers, she knelt beside it, night and day, singing songs and petting it gently, so it wouldn't know it was alone. During the months that it took for the arm to grow, the old woman tried planting bones of other kinds. Chicken bones, bones picked from mice the other cat left at her doorstep, bones from birds found rotting on the sidewalk, even the bones of a small deer she found at the side of the road. Some of them grew, but none of them was as Osiris. She tried putting down blood flakes and hair. She eventually ground beef straight from the grocery store. She poured chicken broth and carrot juice and raw eggs into the soil. Still, most of the crops turned dull yellow like rotten teeth. They became brittle and collapsed without taking root. Osiris got healthier and healthier. One day she saw the arm moving, straining for a chunk of tuna she had left there. She rushed to dig him up. Osiris shook himself off. Clumps of dirt stuck to the mossy coat. He opened blank white eyes as dull as quartz. He yawned, and she saw a set of perfect granite teeth. It wasn't quite Osiris, she knew that, but it was close enough for her to take it in. The thing that would lay beside her at night. It wasn't warm like Osiris used to be. It was damp and smelled musty, and it didn't purr. But the old woman knew that it was hers. It brought her presents, rats and raccoons, and occasionally dogs that it somehow dragged from neighborhoods around her house. She never planted any of these because she was afraid that if they grew up, they would remember what had happened. As time went by, it became harder and harder for the old woman to take care of herself. She began to forget which of the crops in her garden had been there the longest, which ones she could expect to blossom into life, which to uproot and hide in her shed. Eventually, when she couldn't remember how many there were, and became confused at all the holes appearing in the dirt. It was after she actually saw one emerge on its own, a bat, that she didn't remember planting, that she knew she needed help. An old woman shouldn't have to finish her life alone. She thought about it for a little while. It wouldn't be easy to get what she needed, but the old woman was alone and had little left but time. She considered sneaking into a hospital or university, but she had never been one to break the law and didn't know how to begin going about it. So the old woman started her old rattling car and drove around, always late at night. It took a long time, countless miles, along lonely roads. But she found what she was looking for eventually. It was late at night when she saw the pickup truck flipped over, lying crumpled at the bottom of a small ravine. The old woman stopped her car and made her way carefully down to the wreck. Hope started to flood from deep inside her, filling her up, making her warm. She found exactly what she needed. The young man hung upside down, trickling blood, face cast in a delicate sleep. He was beautiful. It was hard work on her hands and knees, hacking away at the seatbelt with her rusted garden shears. It took a while, but she got him down eventually, careful not to let him fall on top of her. Dragging him up the hill was even harder, and she was afraid someone would stop, would see her and take her to jail. But the old woman did not give up, and eventually she got him to see the passenger seat. The rest was easy. She planted him in the patch of the ground behind her house and waited. She mixed the soil with steak and tomato juice and bacon and sometimes beer. Everything she could think of to make a man grow. She brought a portable radio and played music for him, always singing along at night. She held his bony hand and knew that the loneliness was almost over. The old woman gradually cleaned her house. She hired a truck to take away the magazines and shopping bags. She brought a machine to shampoo the cat smell from her carpets. On the night her new husband stirred, she was there waiting. She helped him up and gently brushed the dirt from his cool skin. She looked into his dry, white eyes and pressed his rough cheek to hers. She took him by the hand and led him inside. She showed him around the empty house, nice but now a little cramped. As she led him down the hall to the bedroom, she told him about how they would have to renovate. They needed space for children if they were going to make it a home. Now, thank you all for listening to these stories of the dark. If you enjoyed, please check out the original stories in the description below on the YouTube upload. And be sure to like and subscribe. And I will be sure to see you later. Fools.